Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Alke Halberg. I am part of the Cohesive Marketing team. I will be assisting the team today with the webinar as moderator. We will give it another 30 to 60 seconds to allow all the attendees to join us on this call. Great, I think we can start. Hi everyone and welcome to our webinar on asset management strategy, creating a plan for predictive maintenance in the 2025. Before we start, I would just like to highlight some administrative tasks. Note that this webinar will be recorded and distributed post-webinar. All the attendees are currently set to listen-only mode, but feel free to post any questions or comments in the chat or question box. We will address these at the end of the webinar. Should you have any technical questions or problems, please log it with the GoToWebinar technical team in the form of a question mark or help section on the panel itself. Right, I'll be handing over to the host in a bit, but let me do an introduction of our speakers and Cohesive first. Working across all stages of the lifecycle, Cohesive helps owner-operators embed digital ways of working that drive operational efficiency and enhance asset performance. Cohesive draws on core tech solutions to support its clients. These solutions include Bentley's Infrastructure Cloud, iTwin, and IBM Maximo, for which Cohesive is the largest implementer. Our speakers for today are Kieran Dharmasilane, Senior Analyst Industrial Transformation from Verdantix, and Kevin Eggy, Director for Global Business Development at Cohesive. In this webinar, you will learn the latest trends and innovations, market best practices, predictive maintenance, impact of IoT and AI, and lastly, the IBM MAS benefits. So without further ado, let's dive in and hand over to our first speaker for today, Kieran.
Thanks, Elka. Yeah, welcome everyone. Nice to meet you all. What I'm going to do now, as Elka briefly mentioned, is talk a little bit around the actual landscape of asset management, talk about some of the trends, some of the players in the space, what we're seeing, before handing over to Kevin to really deep dive into the cohesive side of things. So, starting off with trends in asset management for 2025. I think when we talk about asset management, it's important to also think about what that actual landscape of asset management means and what we consider. So at Verdantix, when we look at asset management, we look at kind of, three main solutions: your EAM and CMS tools, your APM tools, and your AIP tools, your asset performance management, asset investment planning tools. Really, what these tools are working on is a various sets of kind of horizons, starting off with kind of on the left, the operational side of things. So looking at kind of your asset health, your monitoring capabilities, using that data to then help with failure prediction. Very much the core basis of what you'd call an asset performance management solution. Then you move towards the right, more of a tactical looking at idea. So kind of thinking about, okay, how do we take that data to support things like alerts and analysis? How do we start taking that data to think about, okay, if we know the condition of assets, what we do with that information? So then you get to the kind of more the EAM, CMS side, the work order workflow side of things. This is where you can actually optimize your maintenance activities, really thinking about scheduling, planning, really trying to optimize that kind of daily, weekly, even monthly style of things. So move further to the right, all that data, both in your APM and kind of EM, CMS tool, that kind of historic data, future data, data around kind of what's happening today in the plant and what could happen tomorrow, moves into that strategic aspect, thinking about, okay, the investment planning landscape. How can we think about what's happening today to support budget allocations? When should we maintain an asset? When should we replace an asset? When should we move forward into some sort of budgetary new discussions, capital investments, etc. And you get further long term, and that all feeds back into what would be your company's ERP system. So bringing in kind of budgetary data, investment plans, inventory data, etc. And it's held there for more kind of, I guess, generic company activities. In terms of the space itself, I mean, this space has been around for quite some time now. We've seen it grow. We've seen kind of CMS grow into EAM. We've seen the APM move away from just failure prediction to kind of production optimization. We've seen a number of things, but kind of where we see the market today and what we see happening, really, we kind of split up at Verdantix into kind of four key major trends. The first being around AI. If we break it down in terms of the main software segments of asset management solutions within APM, we're very much seeing AI being applied to kind of triage failures, act as kind of a sense check, even seeing kind of co-pilot solutions coming in to allow prescriptive analytics and better training. When we look at the more CMS, EAM, work order management, maintenance flow side of things, it's all around kind of how to get marginal gains, how can we kind of autofill failure codes, how can we streamline the kind of day-to-day activities to help upskill the less experienced folk. Within the investment planning side, it's all about kind of early indications, improving decision frameworks, etc. Second part, so kind of we're seeing is a lot of lines are blurring between the asset management spaces. I've spoken quite separately about APM, EAM, and AIP so far, but we're seeing a host of acquisitions in the market at the moment that's really blurring the lines and causing some sort of convergence across these tools. I mean, over the last 2-3 years, we've seen Hexagon acquiring Infor for their EAM tools, and then more recently ITIS for APM. We've seen Siemens acquire the likes of Brightly Software and Sensei. We've seen IFS acquire P2, Copperleaf, Poker, and others. And we've also seen kind of the firms like IBM really looking to expand their offering from CMS all the way up to AIP and APM as well. Next side, we've got the service providers here. So what we're seeing is these service providers have got a wealth of subject matter expertise. We've got so much information in-house that they've been using for their consulting activities, but now there's a thought of why not commercialize that software. So what we've seen here is the firms like Wood from Pinnacle on the APM side. We've seen almost in a similar way with Bentley Systems and Cohesive and the partnership there for the EAM side, but a lot of service providers now looking to bring software to the market as well as their services. And then lastly, net zero. I'm not going to talk too much about this. Everyone knows how much of a buzzword decarbonisation net zero is, but seeing it rising in priority, got the likes of AspenTech, GE, Copperleaf, etc., all doing a lot on this space. Bentley as well has very strong capabilities on the environmental planning side nowadays as well. So with that, I think it's a nice point to stop for our first poll question. So I believe everyone should see the poll popping up on their screen. The question is, what is your organization's top priority in asset management for the next year? Options being implementing new technologies, improving maintenance processes, reducing operational costs, and enhancing asset lifespan. We'll just give everyone kind of 30 seconds here, but we appreciate if everyone can quickly hit a button. There we go. Seeing a few votes. Everyone keep going, please. Give it another 15 seconds or so. Seeing a lot of firms saying improving maintenance processes being a top option. Nice to see. All right, yeah, I think that's enough. Thank you, everyone who did vote. Anyone who has not voted yet, please do vote if you got a chance to. I have just lost the data there, but I think I saw it. I saw improving maintenance processes as the top choice there. Yeah, it makes complete sense. We're seeing improving maintenance as your top choice. I mean, Verdantix love to talk about how AI is going to change the game and how we can use asset management to support net zero initiatives, etc. But really, fundamentally, the first step on any asset management journey is improving your maintenance. So moving away from your Excel and legacy tools, investing in a CMS and EAM platform, really using your service providers to help drive a kind of low-hanging fruit in maintenance, if you want to say. So understand the criticality of your assets, think about how you can streamline work order generation and move into more of a move away from a kind of a reactive to a more predictive environment is really a big focus. Nice. Thank you, everyone who did vote there. So moving on, the next thing I want to talk about is kind of where does predictive maintenance fit in this asset management landscape? Firstly, what do we mean by predictive maintenance, or PDM, as we often say? Really, the way Verdantix defines it is it's real-time data-driven methods to understand the condition of assets today, use that information to predict what's happening in the future to help optimize short-term plans, especially around maintenance. So really, what we've seen over the last kind of 5 years, maybe a bit longer, it's been this kind of shift in the way we maintain our assets. No more are we just looking at kind of when does an asset fail and doing some sort of reactive maintenance. We're kind of moving towards a planned and proactive regime, to taking into account the condition-based data at the time of our activities, try optimizing when we can better intervene and maintain our assets. But as we've got more and more data available, there's been and kind of more processing power available, and even with the proliferation of AI analytics coming into play, what we've quickly started realizing is actually we've got so much data about what's happening today. Why can't we predict what's going to happen tomorrow to then improve our maintenance even further? And that's kind of where predictive kind of sits in. It's kind of this idea now of let's leverage all that existing information, expertise, maintenance records we already have to think about what could happen tomorrow, thereby kind of extending asset uptimes, looking at extending asset life, helping budget properly, and ultimately reducing kind of increasing safety, reducing accidents, etc. So helping both on the asset side as well as the people side. But when we talk about predictive maintenance, while there are vendors out there and service providers you can go out to and say, look, we're offering a predictive maintenance solution, it's not really just a one solution. It's kind of it's very different types of predictive maintenance, I would say. So at Verdantix, we kind of look at it as three types really, or three maturity scales. The first being condition maintenance, which isn't strictly predictive, but it's kind of just purely using sensor data, real-time data to understand what's happening and then setting kind of thresholds around kind of when things might fail if it breaches a certain threshold. Very kind of vibration monitoring type activities. Very much used on the kind of inspection around areas, very more for the field workers who can just kind of recognize different triggers when they're walking around. Then you get your AI based analytics. Now this is really where your machine learning statistic models come into play, starting to forecast asset failures. You're building models based on historic data, training it on real time data, and then using it to understand what can happen in the future. Then you've got your probably your most sophisticated is your actual asset performance management solutions. So this is combining that AI-based area as well as physics-based models and failure modes to really kind of put context to what the AI tools are seeing. Really what it's doing is allows you both not only predict when failures are happening, but get prescriptive guidance about how to actually improve or act to those failures. And yet firms like Bentley Systems and IBM are huge players in this space. Great. So the next thing I want to show you is some survey data. So anyone who's not worked with Verdantix before, not familiar with Verdantix, one thing to know about us, we love our surveys. We love going out to the market and talking to firms, talking to buyers of software to understand what's making people tick. So in the last 2 years, we've actually done 2 surveys, the 2023 and 2024 survey, where we actually coincidentally interviewed 304 executives, but it was executives across operations, maintenance, engineering, safety, etc., across the globe in a number of industries, really trying to understand their budgets, their priorities, their tech preferences. And what we saw when we asked them around kind of their kind of investment around predictive maintenance, what we saw is currently right now, predictive maintenance is still quite immature. So we look at the far left figure, only about 20% of firms have got a commercial software in place. But saying that, moving to the middle one, about just under 50% now are saying they're going to actually increase investment in predictive maintenance solutions over the next 12 months. And one of the big drivers we're seeing again is how predictive maintenance is being seen as a very helpful solution to achieve net zero goals. So what's that? Nearly 80% of firms there saying that net zero is predictive maintenance tools will help achieve net zero goals. And that's very much because if you can predict failures, you can stop unplanned downtime, you can reduce your emissions and improve your energy consumption. So what does Verdantix do in this space, and what we've seen in the market? So just starting off with some research, Verdantix has something we call a green quadrant. It's our flagship research product that is a completely independent and transparent analysis where we look at key players in a software segment or services segment to see what they offer and rank them accordingly. So we've done a number of reports recently on with this methodology. It's kind of a 6-month process. We ask all participants to fill in questionnaires with over 100 questions, provide demos, interview their customers, etc. So it's a very rigorous assessment. And earlier this year, we did the 2024 EAMGQ, which you see on the far left. And really, what this looked at, it was the second one we've done. So we did one in 2022. And what we saw here was that we had a number of new entrants to the market, the likes of ServiceNow and IFS, really building out their own kind of EAM solutions. But also, what we saw is big influence on applications and artificial intelligence, and very much seeing firms like IBM topping the charts here and coming out as leaders because of their focus on AI and their way of streamlining maintenance workflows. When we look at the 2024 APM GQ, this was the third we've done in about 4 years. Key things we saw here as a new entrance was because of a proliferation of AI analytics, we saw EAM vendors crossing the chasm into APM, so service providers commercializing their tools. As such, you're seeing names like Wood Group, Uptime AI, Hexagon, IFS, all now playing in the APM software space. Market leaders we saw here, the likes of Bentley Systems, IBM, Aviva, GE, and so on. Really, the reasons why they came as market leaders is they are legacy players in the space. They've continued to grow as the market grew. They've brought in their own AI capabilities. They've expanded their solution past failure predictions to environmental and production and safety as well. Really seeing a solid solution that focuses on usability, not just giving information that can tell you about failure predictions. And lastly, we looked at services. So kind of how good are firms at implementing asset management technologies, purely focused on service providers rather than kind of software and service providers. Here, this was the first we've done in it. We looked at 10 different customers, 10 different vendors across, I think it was 5 different service areas. Primary focus is really around how good firms are implementing EAM, APM, and ARP software. What we saw here was Cohesive and Wood really were some of the 2 top leaders there. Wood having very good strength around APM asset integrity solutions, whereas Cohesive showing strong capabilities across EAM and APM and asset integrity as well, especially with the influence from Bentley and IBM as well. So kind of a very quick one on how we built this data. So effectively for each green quadrant, what we do is we set a group of categories. So I think this is the EAM green quadrant. You've got your functional and technical capabilities. The first one, these are kind of the core capabilities of the EAM platform. We score each of the capabilities in a framework that scores everything between 0 and 3. Bring that all together based on weightings around how important each category is, and it forms your y-axis on the quadrant. And then you look at the momentum, which is at the scale of your solutions, things like acquisitions, partnerships, financial resources, and customers, to understand how strong your solution is across the actual market, and that forms the x-axis. If anyone's interested in actually learning more about methodology, feel free to message me after the call or read the report, and there's a much deeper dive of it available. Great. So next thing is the future of asset management. So what can we expect as we go through the market? In terms of the future, really we're seeing three key things. Kind of the bolstering of AI, data management becoming a foundational layer, and net zero obviously increasing further. So starting with AI, what we've seen is that AI tools are really enabling firms to quickly extract information and contextualize vast data sets, allowing them to move from just predictive activities to more prescriptive activities. We've seen generative AI come into play with a lot of chatbots and co-pilots coming in to allow kind of retrieval applications and more interactive activities with software. When we surveyed our respondents this year, what we saw around kind of use cases for AI was kind of process automation for plant managers was top of it, as well as kind of predicting failures and unplanned downtime. When we look at Gen AI, it's all around kind of improving plant performance. So very much seeing AI as a mega trend to support operational issues for industrial firms. In terms of data management, I think we all know siloed data is one of the largest obstacles we've got in the market right now. And as firms look to embark on that predictive maintenance journey, the first and most important thing is making sure you've got the right data available. So we're seeing a proliferation of data management tools really focused on ingesting data from anywhere, but then also contextualizing data, managing data, making it accessible for anyone, and then putting in a format that can then easily be analyzed for kind of predictive maintenance activities. Great. And then the last one, I think this is my last slide actually, before last poll as well, but is the decarbonisation net zero side of things. So what we're seeing here, I mean, broadly speaking, decarbonisation is one of the major targets for all corporate firms. And what we're seeing effectively is that these decarbonisation targets are now feeding into kind of operational targets and challenges. So in order for firms to effectively collect data to meet these targets, they need digital solutions, especially kind of operations and maintenance tools, because these have knock-on effects around kind of reducing emissions, supporting energy consumption, etc. I think actually the World Economic Forum came out, I want to say earlier this year or maybe last year, and said really to digital solutions can help reduce your energy consumption by I think up to 10%, which I think is significant. If you think of firms kind of 2020, 2030 goals where they want to get to in terms of net zero, if licensing a software can get you 20, 15, sorry, 10, 15% of your way, that's huge benefits and a lot cheaper than investing in a carbon capture plant on the side of your refinery, for example. On top of that, we're seeing that day-to-day technicians and their mobile apps are needing to have some sort of reporting capability to support sustainability metrics. So even more important to incorporate that ESG side into asset management as well. Great. So I think last thing from me before I hand over to Kevin, but live poll number 2. So the question will be popping up for you guys shortly, but the question is, what are the biggest challenges to your organization? So what are the biggest challenges your organization faces in implementing predictive maintenance? Data integration issues, high implementation costs, lack of a skilled personnel, or data accuracy and reliability? I'll just give everyone 30 seconds or so to reply to that, and then quickly get through the data. Early indications of showing data accuracy and reliability. Oh, swifting a lot. Data integration as well. High implemented. It looks like everything is quite equally important, which is great to see. Okay. Okay, I think data integration issues is the top option, but everything is got quite a few hits there. So thank you everyone who voted. Biggest challenges, data integration I think is a big issue because I think as you all know, there's so many different solutions out there in the market. Data is being stored in different places. Silo data I've already mentioned. I think what we're seeing a lot from the vendors and the service providers in the space now is there's a big focus on how to streamline that integration piece. I haven't got the number from my head, but one of our survey questions actually asked corporate buyers around using service providers for data integration, and it came out as one of the top options around why firms turn to service providers like Cohesive to support data integration, because they just don't feel they can do it themselves, and firms like Cohesive have a wealth of information and source to support that issue. Top of that, data accuracy and reliability, I think really there. You'd be surprised how much data you already have in your solution. Again, service providers being a great place to help you understand and sort through that data. So don't be afraid to reach out to your service providers to support you on that front. Great. With that, I'm going to hand over to Kevin to talk through some of the Cohesive Suite offerings.
All right. Well, thanks, Kieran. Great messaging on predictive maintenance. So my role today is to talk about more of what we're seeing from a Cohesive perspective, what we're seeing in the field related to predictive maintenance, and helping the audience bring that back into their organization. So next slide. When we talk about getting to predictive, looking at how do we optimize our maintenance process and have a tool do predict a failure for us, a lot of the conversation really focuses on the tool. The tool is absolutely necessary, but the key pieces that are around that tool are what will help make predict a reality in the environment and actually help kind of build that path to predict. So understanding your processes related to maintenance. So if you do have a tool that can predict an asset failure, what do you do with that information? Is it just another alarm that comes up and you ignore it? Or when you have a predictive tool that will say your motor is going to fail in 30 days, have you developed a process that you can look at that data, understand that data, and then act on that data, whether that is moving out your maintenance schedule or moving in that asset to your maintenance schedule? The process is key, above and beyond the predictive tool. How you get to develop that process is really working on your reliability strategy. Your reliability strategy is going to inform where are your major risk areas, what are those key assets that are absolutely critical. Those critical assets are where we would spend the time and money to implement Predict, and pull that back into developing a process and ultimately making a successful implementation. So, a plug for Cohesive here is Cohesive's expertise is looking at, from an advisory perspective, your whole maintenance organization, operations. How can we, help you understand and kind of peel that onion back and understand your reliability strategy overall, which will then help your organization mature into an organization that can leverage Predict. Next slide. So I'll build on what Kieran had already mentioned around APM. I think, from a field perspective, looking at APM, the predictive tools, even within the IBM ecosystem with Health and Predict, really what, from a maintenance perspective, they're designed to do is provide decision support. That's a key piece where it is information that your team will act on. Will that act of creating a work order, taking down a particular asset ever be automated? It's highly unlikely. But that decision support is what enables your relatively small team or focus team on a particular plant line or particular plant overall. It can surface days and weeks worth of research all within one particular notification of a particular failure and the supporting information that's behind that. So if you look at APM, it's a critical part to the asset management strategy overall. And going back to, if you were to summarize APM, it is decision support for understanding how you improve your maintenance process. Next slide. So IBM Cohesive is a major partner with IBM. So we are a platinum partner of IBM. We focus on implementing Maximo for our customers. And our customers run the whole range of maturity. And at a minimum, they are all within that manage realm of Maximo. So creating work orders, scheduling out that maintenance, leveraging mobile. So you've got your field technicians with the right work process that they have for assessing an asset, doing that actual work on that asset. So that's the foundation of Maximo, foundation of asset management overall. With the Maximo Application Suite, that's where we're having this type of conversation. So IBM has invested heavily over the last few years in building out these tools that are all part of a suite. So you can start with monitor, bringing in that information. So one of the polls was data integrity. So first you have to get your data out of multiple systems, then you normalize that data and have access to that data. That can be done in monitor. You can leverage for condition monitoring health within the application suite. And then what we're talking to today, building all the way up to Predict. That is a growth curve, a maturity curve within the maintenance organization. It's all at arm's reach with working with IBM, working with Maximo Application Suite. So it's a very powerful application that's IBM is investing heavily in. Next slide. So from the field perspective of Cohesive, with our customers, going up this maturity curve, in this particular image looks very linear. when many conversations, it's, well, you've moved from scheduling to condition-based maintenance. So how many runtime hours have this particular asset had? So let's put that in the schedule to maintain. The next logical step would be kind of moving up a curve, and, well, if I'm already doing condition-based maintenance, maybe I can just move right to predict. That curve from going to condition-based maintenance up to more of a predictive model really requires that honing in of your reliability strategy that I mentioned, on the first slide. Again, that's where Cohesive, from an advisory perspective, helps our customers build out that reliability strategy. That reliability strategy then informs where your team focuses from a critical asset perspective, and then driving towards predict. And as we'll talk about with driving to predict, it is not, it's not a big bang where you just will roll out predict to an entire plant or an entire organization. Based on that reliability strategy, you can then have a focused approach where it's step by step by step, and it's more of an attainable type approach to implementing predict. Next slide. So why APM and why now? You can see there are a list of reasons, both why and why now. They're going to be specific to your organization. Ultimately, if you look at the kind of current economic environment, one thing that kind of stands out is if your organization is standing still, you're already falling behind. That adage of if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think we're seeing over and over that those rules just cannot apply anymore. The efficiencies that are being brought in the supply chain, cybersecurity threats, how do all of these factor into just your overall maintenance strategy? So you're trying to focus on one, just extending your asset life, but overall extending an asset life is really part of that bigger picture of your organization. That bigger picture could be driving revenue, could be delivering product more reliability if you're a utility. So there are a lot of reasons within your organization. Understanding what is specific to the organization's strategy and honing in on what makes sense for your organization is key. Another one that we hear a lot is the aging workforce. They're certainly not only aging workforce, but also, I would say, slimming down of the of the workforce. So there are fewer people to do more maintenance of actually more assets. That some of those assets may actually be smarter assets. They're more complex assets, if you will. So how do you take the knowledge that your organization has and put them into systems like Maximo Application Suite? That's really helping retain that knowledge, even as some of those workers are moving to different roles, different companies, maybe just retiring, but it's keeping that knowledge within your organization. So, next slide. So Kieran talked to some of the market forces already, drilling down into, I guess, what we're seeing in the field. Customers, I think everyone can relate to these. So doing more with less, I guess, would be a summary, around cost savings, equipment reliability. How do we extend the life of an asset? How do we not, have to replace assets in the field because they have not been budgeted for those types of replacements? Safety is a key concern driving predict. So, one antidote would be to go to YouTube and just query steel mill asset failures, and you can see that asset failures may stop a production line. They may turn off power. A lot of those types of failures actually have safety consequences. I've worked with a customer that had to close down an entire chip making fab because their systems got to a critical level that they could release toxic gases. So instead of reaching that point, they closed down the plant because it was more of a react mode. So from a predict perspective, can you increase safety by getting ahead of safety incidences and actually have cost savings, as part of that strategy. And then market forces, one that isn't talked about a lot in operations maintenance, predict, is really increasing a company's bottom line. So, IT used to be an expense. Now IT is looked at as a revenue driver, so an innovator within an organization. Manufacturing traditionally was just an expense, kind of run to failure. How does our manufacturing environment help us increase our revenue, increase our product output? Maintenance operations is seen as, how can we be more efficient with what we have today so we can drive more revenue out of a particular plant, drive more product. So, it's not just about maintenance, it's really about increasing the company's bottom line. Next slide. There are a lot of challenges to predict, and many customers, as they grow, are starting on this maturity curve journey. They're all talking about the same roadblocks, if you will. So data quality, that was already mentioned in our poll. Certainly data quality is an issue. It wasn't a focus. Data, we have piles of data. The history of gathering that data was just to surface an alarm. Now we have alarm fatigue. So no one was focused on the quality of that data. You're seeing more and better data come out of systems today as the awareness of data quality does matter. And looking at data quality from a predict perspective, taking it back to a reliability strategy will uncover your critical assets. Now you can focus on those critical assets. Which ones have the best data? Which ones have data quality that's the closest to helping achieve your goal by implementing a predict model with that right data? Now you can hone in a place to start. So you can remove that roadblock because you may have one or two critical assets that have great data quality. Getting over the curve of getting as best data quality as you can would be a minimal effort compared to just thinking we don't have great data and using that as a roadblock. There are ways to get through the data quality issues. Data integration, that's kind of where Maximo Application Suite has Monitor. So bringing in multiple sources of data, normalizing that data, a key aspect of the application suite. Skills gap, from a predict perspective, certainly is there. The engineers that understand those assets, understand what that data is, likely are already in your organization. Pulling in a trusted party that can help with predict, help build those models, that is part of teamwork. Don't look to do everything inside your organization yourself. You can fill in those skills gap with a trusted partner. And cost, any new digital strategy is going to have a cost. A big portion of working with a partner, working internally, building up a business case, for your executives, aligning it to the overall strategy. So if there's a strategy around going into a new market, doing a new product, or producing more, showing how that cost for predict is going to be greatly shadowed by the fact that you can deliver more product, more reliable, kind of meet your SLAs. So cost is a factor, but it should, just like any business case, be factored into improving business processes overall. So next slide. Now we get to that actual business value of predict, and you can look at it across within the maintenance and operation organization. Again, do more with less. So there are many customers that are essentially doing predict or kind of asset investment planning on a massive spreadsheet. It's taking months to collect data. Data becomes stale. You've got to refresh. So the more data decision insights that you can drive out of Maximo, the application suite, I guess the more efficient your organization is going to be. So how do you get to data-driven insights in a faster, more timely manner? That is moving up that maturity curve to predict. So, a classic case with predict is that you already have a maintenance shutdown window or maintenance, scheduled maintenance that's coming up in 3 months. A particular asset is showing as it may fail within the next 2 months, but that asset is not scheduled to be maintained for 6 months. Why not, through data-driven insights, pull that asset maintenance into that particular scheduled maintenance? Now you may have reduced another maintenance, down the line that would require a plant shutdown. Again, a lot of business value in that type of data insight. Even leveraging, showing that your organization is moving to a predict more reliable manufacturing, delivering your product type approach. That can be promoted even with investor. We've seen AI, we've seen more of these kind of data-driven type approaches for the digital strategy promoted in investment type discussions, so that companies know they can trust your company to deliver product. They know that your organization is a leader in this space. You've got your data together. You've got your reliability strategies together. You're moving towards that predict state, if you will. So just looking at these, there's different ways to promote the business value, even from a reliability perspective. Delivering product to your customer may not be an end customer, maybe B2B, but driving customer satisfaction. So as you're promoting, like, how do we do more with Maximo Application Suite? Talking to the business about these types of value is what gets the business interested in kind of helping carry that torch of why we should invest in this type of technology. Next slide. Now, just some by way of background, so I did work with IBM for 6 years in the Maximo group and worked heavily with it, health and predict. And actually working with customers, these are some of the anecdotes that I was able to kind of bring to this session. So looking at moving to predict, it's an absolute journey. Again, there's no tool, there's no particular process. You cannot implement this across every single asset to start. So the organization first, has to align that this digital change is going to align with our strategy. It's going to be consistent throughout the organization. Again, it's a journey. So looking at how we get more efficient in the organization, do more with less, it is, you should see it as, what do we do this year? What do we do in 3 years? Where do we want to be in 5? One thing around data quality is a lack of trust in predictive results. So if you have an engineer who has seen these types of failures, and from a data insight perspective, this asset may fail in 2 months. We've seen engineers say, no way, I haven't heard this particular noise yet come out of this pump. I don't think it's going to fail, right? So how within your process, within that journey, you really have to start look at these data insights, track them through your process, and it may not be an implementable process. It may be, let's go through this process. Did that predict, actually, was like, what was the success factor of that particular result? Now you can start building trust before you implement it within your organization. Another interesting approach is failure of assets ultimately will contribute to decline in sales, decline in revenue. If you look at from even in an IT perspective, so no one knows that IT exists until things fail. No one knows about your manufacturing plant, your output, until there is a massive failure and you can't ship 5,000 units because you were down for the latter half of the day. So it is a critical part of this digital strategy that you have to promote back that our operational efficiency has increased. We're producing more output. That cost per good sold, translating that into increased revenue, increased delivery, increased satisfaction. Part of why I predict projects do not move forward is because they focus on the tool. They focus on what does that predict result. They're not really translating that back to, we caught these 5 failures. Here's the business impact, translating that back into the business. And then looking at back to that key point of what's going to define moving to predict. It's that reliability strategy. Where does your risk lie? Where is that low-hanging fruit that you can start, on this journey? Taking the time to develop that reliability strategy is essential. Next slide. So if you're participating in this webinar today and you're a Maximo customer, there is that transition up to the application suite. And next slide, we can kind of jump into just at a high level, looking at, if you're on Maximo 7.6 today, moving up to MAS, those are real considerations that have real impact on your organization. IBM has been working on the application suite for years and has invested heavily. And now, there is that critical decision point next year where they're going to end of support Maximo 7.6. So from a reality perspective, moving forward, there is progress happening in the world. Standing still means you're already falling behind. Moving into the application suite gives you a whole host of benefits. At a very minimum, you're aligning to the strategy of a major tool that your company is investing in. Maximo Application Suite being a unified platform, it's ultimately becoming a system of record that you can trust on, not just for the asset, not just for work orders, but now you're starting to have operational conditions, from your asset. If you're layering in models around critical assets, now you're building in that predictive, again, decision support within your organization. All of that's within a consistent suite, if you will. So the application suite is meant to have your team be able to take advantage of different solutions as well as the data within Maximo. So it gives your team greater visibility, again, from just your core asset all the way up to how it's operating. And then, one thing that we're hearing, so Maximo Application Suite is built on Red Hat. Your IT team may not have those skills. It's a big jump, just from your infrastructure perspective. That is it's a lift and shift getting over to that type of infrastructure. It's a one-time event. It's not, so there is that work, that pain that has to go, moving over to the new application suite. But again, you're aligning your company, your investment in an application with where IBM's putting their investment. You're gaining a ton of insight that you would not have if you just had standalone applications across different vendors on those particular assets. And then, even from a scalability perspective, as your company needs to use more resources, as you do more with Predict, as you do more with Monitor, it scales easily with Red Hat on the back end. Next slide. So, I'll just kind of summarize my portion of this webinar. When we look at Predict, again, it's not a tool, it's not just a process, it's not just a reliability strategy, it's being able to translate those and help your organization mature from a digital improvement perspective, which ultimately improves your maintenance process. That was one of the key things from the first poll. Improving your maintenance process is fundamentally helping to contribute to the bottom line, like moving from a cost center to aligning to your company's strategy, aligning to that overall revenue target. All of these things come into play. So we don't want to look at it as just how do I improve my maintenance process. Look at it from the full business perspective. Then if we go down into the application suite, you've got all of these different functions that you can now pull together around manage, monitor, help, predict. The licensing approach for app points makes it really easy to consume. So you've got app points that are consistent across one solution, but are across your entire operations organization. Those app points can help you move into Predict in that more journey type approach where you're carving off a few unused app points. You're going to move them over to Monitor, start pulling in data, start normalizing that data, start trusting that data, pull over a few more app points to leverage Predict. Now you can start building as you're building out that business case, you're also building out that technology case. With that licensing approach, it's not, hey, why don't we go spend a lot of money to just get a predict application? You're able to pull that in on a kind of per consumption basis, if you will. So even the licensing strategy that IBM is promoting around Application Suite is really beneficial as you move into that model, ultimately that maturity approach. So, and the last kind of plug for Cohesive, this is our bread and butter, implementing Maximo, working with IBM closely, helping customers from an advisory perspective around how do we advise customers what their reliability strategy should be, which informs moving into Application Suite, justifying those expenses. It's all intertwined, but looking at how do we get to predict, these are the types of steps that your organization can take. Next slide. So, I guess we'll open it up for questions. I think we can. Are we gonna have people?
We are
go off mute?
doing that.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
the first question is for you, Kieran. What does APM, EAM, CMMS, and AIP stand for?
Yeah, sorry, I maybe didn't make it very clear at the start. CMS is computerized maintenance management systems. EAM is enterprise asset management. APM is asset performance management, and AIP is asset investment planning. So those four solutions make up what we would call the asset management landscape of Verdantix. EMM and CMS very much looking at work order management type activities, optimizing your maintenance, optimizing maintenance activities, looking at inventory, spare parts, etc. Asset performance management, or APM, looking at failure prediction. Kevin spoke a lot about it in his slides as well. Asset investment planning, AIP, more looking at long-term budgeting and investment decisions.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, Kevin, what are some quick wins we can achieve by adopting predictive maintenance in our organization?
Yeah, it goes back to that journey. So if you have a reliability strategy looking at your critical assets, within those critical assets, do you have a common type asset that is across multiple plants? Where can you have an asset that you understand, have good data, but also has scale? So, it's not one very asset intensive or it's a critical asset, but you only have one of. Look at a more known asset that you have scale across the organization. I would say is kind of where time would be well spent to help you get scale quickly.
Awesome. Kieran, how do you prioritize which assets to focus on first when implementing predictive maintenance?
Yeah, good question. So when looking to prioritize what assets, I think I'd focus on three, maybe 4 points: so criticality, the risk to your business, data availability, and maybe the complexity as well. So in criticality, it's very much around you want to prioritize the most critical assets. So they're the ones that when you've got downtime, they're the ones causing the most financial impact. There's a lot of tools out there to support criticality of assessments. I'm pretty sure Cohesive work on that front as well. So you can work with service providers and others to do things like criticality assessments if you're not sure about which assets are the most critical. In terms of risk, look at your asset histories. Which assets are the ones that most frequently fail? How hard was it to fix those failures? Think about which ones you need to better understand to improve your kind of ROIs. Data availability, obviously, everyone knows the saying, kind of garbage in, garbage out, right? If you've got good data, you're not going to get good predictive maintenance or predictive analytics going on. So you need to have strong data coming in. Make sure you've got the sensors in the right place. Make sure sensors are available. Make sure it's quality data you're ingesting. And then obviously the complexity side of things. It's obviously easy to implement predictive maintenance tools on certain assets and certain sites. Think about which ones you want to start with. Probably pilot the predictive maintenance approach first before going on to a full kind of multi-site deployment. Start small, grow, learn from your successes, and use that to build momentum. The worst thing you can do is say, look, I want predictive maintenance on all my 5 different manufacturing sites all at once. You invest a lot, one of the sites don't work, and then you go to your boss or your C-level and say, look, it didn't happen, it didn't work because we weren't ready for it. and they're never going to give you the budget again because you've spent so much money on something that in theory would have been great, but you almost ran before you could walk. So you weren't in a position to go as far. So make sure you do kind of start small, keep it as simple as possible, and grow into complexity.
Perfect. Thank you. That's unfortunately all the time we have for today. With that, we can conclude our webinar. I want to thank our speakers for joining us today, as well as you, our attendees, for listening. We have additional information available on our website in the form of blog posts, articles, case studies, and even brochures. If you want to really reach out and discuss your strategic path forward, please reach out. You can also reach out via our website. That is a wrap for today's webinar. Kieran and Kevin, thank you again, and I wish everyone a great day and a happy holiday.
Thanks all.
Thank you.